Okay, so what you're talking about there is asset prices versus consumer prices, right?
Yeah, but even within consumer prices, you have to ask yourself, okay, what type of inflation am I referring to? Right now is a great example
Hmm.
because you've got the price of gas. I just read a Market Watch report this morning. Price of gas is down in the latest CPI numbers by 21%.
Hmm.
Okay. But the price of food on average is up by 5 or 6%. The price of education, I would
Hmm.
guess, is up higher than that.
And my
You
prediction is
pointed out the other,
that one's gonna collapse. Thankfully, I think with
yeah,
people realizing they can learn online, and with the universities maybe not having the ability to bring people back to campuses, or people not wanting to go back to campus because they're afraid of the social distancing or the lack of ability to socially distance. and
right.
and I think that's going to be great. Let's see a lot of deflation there because that's been scamming people forever. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so but I think you make a great point that you could see the cost of education come down
Hmm.
while at the same time medical care, the cost goes up.
Hmm.
You pointed out some flights with me the other day
Yeah.
when we were going back and forth via email, where initially, and you would just make logical sense, you see all these airplanes that are literally being parked
Yeah.
at airports, like
Right.
this giant parking
I've
lot,
seen it. Yeah,
and
they're some of the functioning airports that you might, if anyone takes a flight anymore. But there are like three people watching or listening that are actually taking flights occasionally, but that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
And if
yeah.
you go to the airport, you just go to a regular, widely used airport, and they'll have one whole runway with jets just stacked up on that runway,
Right.
billions of dollars worth of equipment. I mean, billions and billions of dollars worth of equipment. And interestingly, it is expensive for these airlines to store those airplanes. If they
Yeah.
don't start those engines every couple of days, those things decay quickly. So storing those planes is very costly. I didn't know that till recently. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, but most people would think, okay, that's got to be deflationary. There's no customers, there's no
Hmm.
passengers,
Yeah.
so airlines just must be dramatically lowering their prices.
Right.
And they did initially.
Yes.
What you've seen more recently is you have the supply component come into play. So it's not just demand,
Right.
it's also supply. So
Yeah.
if supply decreases faster than demand, then you still could, then prices still could rise. And that graph you showed me was a great example. Just for your viewers, Jason sent me kind of a price chart from going back, I think, to February or January.
Yeah, it was
So,
like right before the lockdown started, and it was just from, you could do this yourself. It was just from Google Flights, the website,
right.
and the chart, you can tell him George the punchline, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was a flight direct from Miami to LA.
Yeah.
And it started off, I think, maybe $400 or $350.
Yep.
And then when we first had the virus, you just see it plummet down. It got
50
down to like
bucks.
100
Yeah, yeah,
bucks.
yeah, yeah.
And
Cheap.
and then what happened just more recently in the last few weeks, once they restricted supply, well, there was still some demand,
Hmm.
and then the prices of these flights actually went up higher than they were before.
Right.
So this supply demand kind of battle that we see happening, and it gets granular not just with the price of gas, but food,
Yep.
education, health care, and then asset prices as well.
Hmm. Yeah. So what do I get what you're saying about that, but well, maybe the asset inflation deflation thing. I don't want to go into that, but you said something to me a few weeks ago where this was an interesting kind of dichotomy, where the dollar can be strong, right? You can have a strong dollar, which most people
Yeah,
think that means you have deflation because, look,
right.
it's logical, right? If the dollar is strong, then I can buy more with it. But based on what happens inside the US versus outside the US, that can really be different. It's not that simple, right, George?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at a chart of the CPI going back to 2000 as an example, it just goes from almost in a straight line from left to right. There's a little blip where we get 2008, 2009, where you see just a little bit of deflation in the CPI,
And
but pretty much
what you mean there is you're saying that chart would mostly reflect inflation in the consumer price index. Okay, go ahead.
correct. Yeah, as the government measures it, and you and I would both agree that's probably low for
Sure.
sure. But that's what the government will admit to. And they're admitting that the prices have gone up pretty much just, well, not pretty much, but very steadily since 2000 all the way to 2020. So you always have constant price increases. But during the same time, if you look at a chart of the US dollar compared to, we'll call it the DXY, so a basket of other currencies, you'll see that it's not going up the whole time. It's not going down the whole time. It looks like a roller coaster. Sometimes it's increasing in value, sometimes it's decreasing in value, while at the same time the CPI is always increasing in value. So there really isn't a correlation between the consumer price index or what you're paying for your food at the grocery store or your gas or your healthcare or your rent compared to what the dollar is doing compared to the euro, the yen, or the Colombian peso.
But why is that? Like you would think that when you have a strong dollar, everything else would be cheap in comparison. You'd get to go out and spend your strong dollar. It's like, a lot of people, at least they used to do this years ago, they would literally plan shopping trips where people in the US, when the dollar was strong, would go to London. And New Yorkers would fly over to London to go buy clothes, buy high fashion clothes. These are wealthy people doing this, or upper middle class at least. And then sometimes the trend goes the other way. We've certainly seen it with Asians, Japanese and Chinese, coming to the U.S. over the years, where they have like these buses of people going to shopping malls. And
right, but go back to your original example there, going over to the UK and buying things in pounds.
Right.
But you're still comparing the currencies because the things that you're buying, let's say the clothing that you're buying, could be going up in price in pounds, but based on your dollars, they're going down in price because you're still talking about the swap between the currencies. You're not really talking about the domestic products themselves. Now, to your point, though, when you have an increase or a strong dollar, we'll call it, it does mean that our imports are getting cheaper. So that should be deflationary. But that's just one cross current. You've got the cross current of that. You've got the cross current of the M2 money supply expanding based on the commercial banks. You've got the cross current of the Fed creating more base money or bank reserves and how that's being spent into the financial economy or how it's being lent into the financial economy. And then you've got the velocity of money. So all those domestic dollars, how fast are they circulating within the system? You've got it's like the ocean in the sense that there's not just one tide. That's why I always call them cross currents.
Right. Yeah.
And there's these 10, 20 infinite cross currents that are at play at all times. It's just a matter of deciding, okay, what's the strongest cross current right now that we should be paying attention to? And that's why macro is so fun. I know that's why you enjoy it, but that's what makes it so complex.
Yeah. It's a super interesting topic. I love it. George, give out your website or whatever resource you want to share with people, and any closing thoughts, anything we didn't cover, or whatever you want to share.
No, I think that's it. I'll send you a link to the description for Chris's paper. If you're kind of like geeking out on that stuff, like Jason and I think you'll really
we have
love
no
this.
life.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. But as far as my contact stuff, you can find me on YouTube at George Gammon, Gammon. I do videos, interviews like this all the time, or just on Twitter, just my name.
Yeah. And George is famous for his awesome whiteboard videos, folks. So check him out. He's doing a great job teaching people stuff. George Gammon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.